There's only 4 things that you need to be a really good thrower. Only 4. And this is one of my sweet acronyms, and that acronym is STEM. So you need strength, technique, explosiveness, and mobility. That's it. You don't need anything else.
Hey, how you guys doing? I'm Legend Hayes, athlete of Dane, discus thrower. And I'll be introducing Dane, who is international coach. This past year coached the number 11 male discus thrower and number 9 female discus thrower of all time, 2024. He's had at least 11 athletes show up to the Olympics, multiple Olympic athletes or world championship athletes since 2016. And he has brought multiple athletes to US championships and international athletes across the world. And I'm here to introduce my coach, Dane Miller.
I want to try to distill our concepts and ideas that we use with higher level athletes, the older level athletes, and bring them down to the same thing that we do on site at Garage Strength with athletes that are throwing 30 feet, 35 feet. And so that's one of my personal goals. And also specifically to this presentation is that hopefully you guys can leave here with higher level concepts that you can apply to kids that are just learning how to throw for the first time. So that's the ultimate goal here. So one of the things that I love is I really like using frameworks, and I like to use acronyms a lot because it helps me with my memory. And one thing that I want to provide you guys with is the thought process of when you're training your athletes and your throwers is thinking through this framework of the API framework, okay? And so what I like to do is I'll say, we start with assessing, okay? Then we create a plan, and then we have implementation. And at the bottom of implementation, you can see hopefully you can see that a little bit, I have a little bit of a note on culture. And I think that I want to hammer this part later on in the presentation, but I'm really going to get into it in my discus presentation as well. So that's my fight for you to try and stay for my discus presentation as well. So when we're looking at assessing a group of high school kids, okay? The biggest thing that we have to figure out is 1, how many kids are we going to be training? 2, what are some consistent errors that they're doing? 3, how long have they been throwing? You know, what's the level? Those are all things that we have to do when we're really starting to assess the group of throwers that we have. Okay, and then we have to look at the calendar. Okay, what are the goals? When's the big meets? How is that going to be laid out? And then after that, we as coaches have to provide clarity. And I think that as much as it pains me to say this, football has done a really, really good job of getting kids into the weight room, of getting kids to go the extra mile. And I think throws coaches could really step up in regards to creating that same type of culture and that same type of intensity that football has. And that's going to be something I will beat down quite a bit throughout this entire thing. So let's get to the next slide here. I think when I actually was sent I'm very good friends with a biomechanist named Christoph Kipp, and he sent me a research article to read, and he's like, all that throwing is specific to the shot put. You're in a 2.135 meter circle. The delivery phase is about 250 milliseconds. All that matters is the angle of release, the speed of release, the height of release. That's it. And if the athletes have really good motor unit function and high rate coding, they're going to be able to have great ground reaction forces to throw far. So we can click on the next slide. But what does that mean? You hear that science and you're like, great, who cares about this bullshit? That's crazy. It doesn't mean anything. And I think that ultimately the big thing that I want to do is like take a step back from the science, because really I don't care about delivery timeline 250 milliseconds. Those things don't matter. So what we need to figure out is the things that actually do matter. So I wanted to just throw that in there and just go over, some of these big factors of what do we do with a large group, which we're going to get into. How do we, determine and look at personalities of athletes? And one thing that I think is important with that is try to figure out early on in your group with your high school kids, who are the kids that are going to be the disrupting kids, okay? Figure them out really early and try to get them to become leaders. Try to get them, they want attention. That's why they disrupt. I know this firsthand. The whole reason why I had in-school suspension once a month throughout my whole high school career is because I just wanted attention. And I think that that's one thing as coaches is we've got to be aware that if we can diagnose the personalities of these athletes and look at them and say, okay, this is the quiet kid. He's going to do everything that we tell him to do. He's a great model. This is the kid that's going to be a pain. Okay, this is the kid that we can bring out to demonstrate a little bit more. Maybe we let him play music or whatever, as long as it's censored, and we can go through those things. And then I think it's important when we're assessing the group, who throws 25 feet, who throws 30 feet, who throws 35 feet, or 40 feet, or 50 feet. And we can start to put them, if we have a group of 10, in these little categories based off their personalities, based off their distances, and then that's going to go into our training and how we set everything up to have a successful season. And then finally here is how many days a week can they actually show up to throw? You know, are they kids that are only going to throw for 3 months out of the year, or are they kids that might throw for 6 months out of the year? So that's like the assessment part that I like to think through, not only with our Olympic caliber athletes, but also with kids that come to us in 10th grade and they say, hey, we want to throw 40 feet for the first time. All right, well, this is the first question. How many days a week are you going to show up? Because you want to tell me you want to throw 40 feet, but you're going to show up once a week and you're not going to throw 40 feet. So you can start to lay out those expectations. So we can get to the next slide. So again, this goes into experience level, and I think that on the first day, what I would sort of push you guys to do, and I think probably a lot of you do this already, is figure out who are the experienced throwers, who are the less experienced throwers. Okay, who can actually move? Who's got good athleticism? Who's got good coordination? Who's got good mobility? Who are the kids that are really stiff? Okay, and then you can see the kids that have less mobility, the kids that have really good mobility, and you can sort of start to think through what those athletes, those different athletes might need. Who are the kids that are coachable? Who are the kids that are not coachable? Now, one thing I do want to bring up, because I know I was talking about disruptors earlier, is that sometimes disrupting kids are actually very, very coachable and they're very receptive. They can still be a pain, but they will listen to you. And then there's other kids that might have an excuse or a reason for why they can't do something specifically because they might not have as much confidence as somebody else. And so those are little, almost like little feedback loops that you can get from the athlete to try and understand how you can best communicate to them so that they're more receptive. And also on the first 1 to 3 days of training, I think it's important to go through all of these, write everything down. Who can do even simple things like skips? Okay, who can do box jump without falling over? Who can walk and chew gum at the same time, right? Like those little simple things of body weight work, and then even immediately on day one, try to teach them how to throw, like immediately. Literally the first day. Not even just a standing throw, teach them how to take a spin on the first day and just see what happens and see who responds in a specific way. Okay, now that's the assessment part, so I am getting a little bit farther ahead of the API framework, so I do need to keep in flow here so that we can go now. Okay, now I made the P a little bit bigger. When I think about throwing, okay, I think it's important that as coaches, we recognize that there's only 4 things that you need to be a really good thrower. Only 4, okay? And this is one of my sweet acronyms, and that acronym is STEM, okay? So you need strength, technique, explosiveness, and mobility. That's it. You don't need anything else. Well, you need to also have mental strength to compete well at meets, but that doesn't count. Maybe I'll put that under the umbrella of strength. So what I like to think about, okay, if we're recognizing that really it comes down to these 4 areas, as coaches, we should be training all 4 areas. Okay, we shouldn't be looking at this going, yeah, strength, technique, explosiveness, mobility. Oh, well, I don't really want to go in the weight room. Well, you got 2 hours. Tell the distance coach to shut up at the beginning of practice and let them get to the circle as soon as possible. Okay, sorry if there's any distance coaches in here. We don't take your time away. Okay, so what I want to do then is I'm going to look at this. We're going to break this down as easy as we can. Okay, if we have high school kids, I think the minimum thing that we can do is that if we're looking at strength, and it's not ranked in any specific way, I think they're all pretty equal. I would argue technique would probably be a little bit of my highest point. But if we're looking immediately at strength, I think minimum trying to get into the gym 3 days a week, okay? Even likely on weeks when there's a dual meet, okay? I think creating the culture early on that they can go into the gym, they can do a clean progression, okay? They can do a back squat or a front squat, and then they can do some type of lunge. That's 3 lifts that they can now do, that we can teach them, and we can see how when we're teaching them the clean progression, okay, we're teaching this clean progression, how do they take that instruction? What do they do? What do they say to you? How do they move? How do they respond? How do they interact with their friends? Take note of that stuff, okay? And we're going to get to a split. You'll see like a workout split later, but I also think we should be training upper body strength as well, which would be bench press, pull-ups, yes, throwers can eventually do pull-ups, military press, any type of row, and then plyometrics. Okay, so plyometrics meaning jump lunges, even jumping rope, doing skips, doing box jumps, doing hurdle hops. Now, the second part here, technique, okay? So this is where we're going to be planning. We're planning about how we're going to lay out the strength portion. Then we're looking at technique. Now, I have a little thing here. Cell phones rule. I personally believe the greatest thing to ever happen to the sport of throwing is having a cell phone, okay? The fact that social media exists and that cell phones exist has single-handedly driven the sport through the roof. I used to have to sit and watch VCR and press rewind, fast forward, rewind, and watch throws over and over again. And even my dad at States, my senior year, I had to watch through a camcorder. And now, because of cell phones, you can have access to thousands of hours of throwing and just watch it so much better, so much smoother. And what that does is it creates, for coaches, it creates this connection where it makes it easier to show an athlete something. Okay? It makes it easier for the athlete to see technique. It makes it easier for the athlete to see Ryan Krauser does this. You know, Joe Kovacs front squats 500 pounds. I think it's okay that we front squat. You know, it makes it a little bit more relatable for the kid and for coaches to have that. Now, off of that, okay, I want to go into like a simple progression here for technique, and this is when we're in this planning stage. And this is when I would be really writing down and thinking through how to educate your kids as simply as possible with technique. Okay, and the longer I coach athletes, and Legend might agree with it, is like it's almost like the dumber my cues get, because I feel like we need to simplify as much as possible. Where I like to have this riddle, okay? If we're teaching a rotational spin, I will literally say you go around the left, and then the right grounds in the middle, you come around the right in the middle here, and then you go around the left. That's how we teach it. You go around, around again, and then around again, okay? That's the technique. It's 540 degrees. The same riddle for glide would be drop, drive, go forward, okay? And it's ingraining these simple cues and simple riddles and simple thoughts. Look, you just got to get around the left a little bit more. Look, when your right's grounding in the middle, you got to make sure that you're not falling over it, that you're staying stacked so your left can come around if you're a right-handed thrower. On the finish, we got to think about getting forward and get around the left on the finish. Those are some simple cues that you can say over and over and over, thousands and thousands of times, and then we'll use this progression here where we'll have, for kids that are beginners, okay, we'll do a banded stand. And so this is during the planning stage. You guys would be planning this before these kids really come in to train, but you would have this memorized that, okay, we're going to do a banded stand and try and feel this tension so that we can feel finishing forward. Okay, then we're going to do a half turn where we don't really think about the left arm opening at all. We try and think just that left leg going to the front from a half turn. The big step to a power and pause would be step to here and then do the spin and get to a pause. Then we'll take a non-reverse and then we'll take a full throw. So that's like the progression that we do like to use. And we're going to get into this a little bit later in the implementation part a little bit more. But does anybody actually have any questions on this spin technique? My whole goal with this would be, we think about coming around out of the back of the circle, sweep down, okay? Once we sweep down, we hold that position, we let the left leg come around at the front. But these are like real simple, this is the progression that we use with kids as soon as they get to garage strength, as soon as they start training with us. And by the end of their first session, they're taking 20 to 25 full throws with the spin immediately, the first day. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so this would be the glide secret progression. Okay, so here's where we're gonna go. We'll do a standing throw. We'll take a banded stand. We'll do an A pull, which is like from this position to here. So we're here, here. And then we'll do the Leif drill. This is named after NCAA champ Leif Arrhenius, where we'll go here, we'll hit in the middle and then throw. Then we'll do a glide where we pause. Then we'll do a non-reverse, and then we'll take a full. A non-reverse meaning we just step forward. So this is the glide progression that we use. We do still have some gliders. A quick thing, actually, you can go back to, just real quick thing on glide. I'm still of the opinion, I think everybody should spin, really. But if a kid comes to me and he's really frustrated and he doesn't want to throw anymore because he's not throwing as far as he was when he was gliding, I'm going to have him go back to the glide because I want him to stay in the sport. So I think that's one thing that we've got to think about in regards to the glide. Okay, so, all right, so now when we're looking at explosiveness and increasing explosiveness, okay, I'll look at, there's specific lifts, but there's also specific jumps that we're going to do and ballistic movements that we'll do. Okay, yeah?
Is there any way we can get a copy of your PowerPoint?
Yeah.
I've been writing some things down, but I thought, well, if we could just
Yeah. James, I got your email. And then I don't know if there's like a better way to share it. How about this? If everybody, there's a QR code at the end of this that if you scan, you'll get an email. You'll get an email from Garage Strength. And it is linked directly to the Colorado Track and Field Coaches Association. So if you get that, then we can actually put you into the email, the Garage Strength email flow, and you'll get this. But I'll also try to get it to you if you don't want to join the email list. Okay, so if we're trying to increase explosiveness, we're looking at plyometrics and ballistic movements. Okay, so think about ballistic movements. I think scientifically are referred to as throwing objects. So that would be like the side medicine ball here, dumbbell throws, hurdle hops, skips, box jumps, jump lunges, anything with a jump. And then mobility, we will plan this into daily warm-up. We will use this. Oh my gosh, I left it in my room. Oh my gosh. I have a PVC pipe that we use. We walk on a PVC pipe every single day as a warm-up. And we'll even have PVC races. My key's in there. If somebody could go get it. Okay. And even we will also, for mobility, we'll have like a daily cool down at the end of the session where they can sort of talk. And you can, and I think with you guys, in this case, if we go through all this, we can have a discussion of like the takeaways from the training session. And what the cues are that everybody needs to focus on moving forward. Okay, so we can go to, okay. Now, this is where I think it will actually become more reasonable to try and piece together a plan here, okay? So I like to think about assessing everything, planning every single thing possible that could happen, okay? And then making the training session as repeatable as possible so that no matter what, every day, the kid comes in, they come to the gym, they come to the circle, they know the flow. They know the exact flow every single day. There's no like, hey, what are we doing today? You're coming in and you're gonna warm up and you're gonna do one of these 3 warm-ups. There's a sheet printed up with everything in it. We're gonna take this many throws with this weight, and this is the group. And what we can do is, what I wanted to provide with you guys is you can set groups, okay, based off of specific to shot here. You would have an entire season plan with the priority competitions put in, okay? You would work backwards from, Colorado states. I don't know if you call it districts. In PA, we call it districts. Happens before states. What do you guys call it? Regionals, okay, yeah. And then for us, we have counties prior to that. So we plan backwards from that state meet. And we'll look at it and we'll say, okay, we got the gold group. These are high school nationals or states type kids. We have the silver group. These are kids that if they work really hard, they can make the states. They'll be really sick if they go and place at states. And then we got the bronze group, which is like if we can get them to counties and they have a good season, they qualify for counties, it's great. It's a win. Okay, so we'll have this group. I think in this case, and this is the bronze group would be the beginners typically. I think it's okay that the kids know what the group is. It's reality. Like that's the way shit is. Like you measure, right? Like everybody knows what everybody else is throwing. You see it. It's real. It's reality. I think not being a jerk than saying that someone's in the bronze versus gold is important, though. For the most part. Now, so I would try to split groups up in this manner, and then we would go. So that's the season plan. We'd come back. For that monthly plan, and we would look at, okay, when there's meets coming up, this is what the expectations are. When there's dual meets, these are the expectations, okay? The bronze group might only get exhibition throws, so we want them to train the whole time, okay? The silver group, it might be a little bit more of a gray area where, hey, when the dual meets start, we need you to score some points, and you're not as good yet, so we might not have them train as much in the gym. The gold group, ironically, I would think usually, in our case, will train almost the whole way through until the end of the season because they should be good enough or so good that they can beat most people in a dual meet. That's my take on that. Okay, but the thing is then is like they would see this yearly plan, then they would see a monthly plan with clear expectations of what is going to happen based off of what group they are in and what meets are coming up. And then that goes into the next level back would be the weekly plan. Okay, so now it's a Monday. Okay, it's Monday. The kids come in. There's a weekly layout, and there's a daily layout for that week. And they say, oh, hey, there's a meet on Thursday. What are we going to do? On Thursday, okay, these are the people that we want to have throw and compete, and these are the ones that we want to still have lift all the way leading into that. And actually follow through that with that entire plan. And I know that this might sound like a lot, but one, if football coaches can do it, track coaches can do it. That's one thing I will always bring constantly. Two, it's not that much work once you do it one time. You can adjust it year over year, and it's not as challenging. Three, it has clarity for kids. Okay, kids like to do work as long as we provide them with clear-cut paths to do that work. Okay, and then that daily plan, this is where it's going to be most important, is that they've got to have a specific, they're going to have their distance runner team warm up, but then they'll get into like their group warm up. They'll have what I like to use here, this would be like the 3 Ps, okay, so we have our plan, we present to the kids what it is, now you have power in that throw session to help guide them through. We get into the weight room, are they going to lift, are they going to do some type of jumps? And then we finish that session off with some type of mobility. At the end, we can meet for 10 minutes. We can go through some mobility, some stretching, and we can talk about the training session. Okay, we can go to the next one. Okay, this is, yeah, I wanted to bring this. So this is our PVC pipe, but we will like have, and I'm actually going to go into this a little bit later with warming up, foot strength, and a lot of kids who go flat-footed in the middle of the circle when they're sweeping, they go flat-footed. PVC pipes will help them stay plantar flex a little bit more. So much so now that some of this stuff that we'll start to go over also or start to plan with is that we want to figure out what happens if there's a long team meeting. Are we cutting warm-ups? Are we cutting out jumps or the lift? What type of throws are we going to focus on for that day because coach talked too long? Are we planning, do we have a plan also pre-built before the season even starts? What happens when it snows? What happens when it rains? What happens when it's too muddy in the landing area? What happens at Easter even? Those things start to be factored in and you lay out, okay, are we going to do drills? Are we going to do some type of progressions? Okay, are we going to do some video review where we can go in and we can watch Ryan Krauser win the Olympics for the 15th time? whatever it is, we can have that planned ahead of time. What happens if we don't have enough implements? If we go to, we only have 4 shots and we only have 3 discs. Have the kids have homework. Let's get some bands, okay? Let's get to school to get some bands. But one of the kids' homework is everybody's got to bring at least a 15 to 20 pound rock to practice, because guess what? You can use them in training. And while people are in the circle, you can go throw the rock and do half turns, and you'll get a lot better. Okay, so that's real. Like, that's actually that's how Jason was trained to become a state champion, throwing rocks. But I do like to use that guide too. If you go back at the bottom, I think ideally, perfect case scenario, you'd have about 8 people per circle, no more than that. I know that's hard, and if you have more than that, then we've got to make sure that the kids can do drills on the side, and we have that planned ahead of time. Okay. So what are we looking at then? The title of this presentation was Speed and Power for Throws, for shot put. So big thing that I look at is a lot of the speed and power does come from technique. Okay, it comes from the progressions and drills and throws. Okay, the more technique that we have, the more speed and power we can develop in the circle. It also comes from just constantly doing tons and tons of repetitions. Resistance training and plyometrics is going to help with explosiveness, okay? It's going to help with kids' confidence. It's going to help them feel motivated. It's going to help them have some sense of camaraderie. It's going to help them feel jacked and feel better about themselves when they put their jersey on. These are really important things that we should be doing on a weekly basis, 3 times a week as throws coaches. And then mobility, we've got to do that so that we can hit better positions in the circle. Okay, this is, I know I'm running a little bit out of time here, but I want to go into culture, and again, I'm going to go into this further in the discus discussion, is that I think everything that I just presented, none of that matters if we can't get kids to come to practice, okay? If we can't get kids to practice, technique doesn't mean anything, lifting means nothing, and none of that stuff matters because you can't get anybody to come to actually throw, okay? And it comes back to all of us here have to have this guideline, okay? We have to have our own expectations. If we're going to be a throws coach, what is your personal expectation? How good do you want to be? Okay, so establish that and then provide that to them. Okay, what do you expect from them and what should they expect from you? And it's got to be a good working relationship where it's like, hey, I'm going to write your program. I'm going to write everything out. I'm going to write down the work for you to do, and I'm going to support you with everything. Okay, so we have those expectations there. We have a clear schedule laid out for them, okay? So they know what the exact schedule is with training. They know what the exact schedule is with competition. And then the accountability aspect is going to be, we're going to report, when you hit a big PR in the weight room. We're going to report how many reps you're taking in the circle. We're going to do a technical analysis with you every single week. We're going to hold you accountable with these things, and we're going to focus on your improvement in the circle, your improvement in the weight room, your improvement with your technique, so that everybody in the gym or everybody who's in the circle that is on the throws team starts to buy into that type of culture. And ultimately, that comes back to you're there for kids to be successful. We're all there for kids to be successful, right? That's it. That's the only reason we're coaching. We're there to have kids be really good as throwers. No one here is making millions of dollars as a throws coach. And if we're here for kids to be good, we better give them everything we can to be good. Don't just sit there and say, that's a lot of work. Yeah, but we're here for kids to be good. So let's try to give them as much of an effort as possible so that we can help them grow and we can then create some type of culture that brings more kids into the sport. And ultimately, it comes back to us supporting them on this entire journey. Okay, and then, how much time I have? Because I think I still have like 5 slides left, but okay, let's go through this real quick, right? Warm up, 10 minutes, okay? And this is where I would want some feedback on this if this is realistic, okay? We typically go about a 10-minute warm up, okay? Then we have the throwing portion, okay? We'll usually use, let's say, in a best case scenario, some kids will throw a heavy shot, some kids will throw a comp shot. Okay, then they come and they lift for 45 to 60 minutes. At garage strength, this might be 2 hours. You want to create the culture. Let's say like every girl's got to bench 135. Every dude's got to work towards 225. Okay, you have a plan there during the lifting for the group, so where they're going to go. And then we have a 10 to 15 minutes of mobility at the end. So this is the exact session that you would have laid out every single day. Some days you won't lift. Okay. Now, again, this is how the whole week split would look. Okay. So Monday through Friday, this is what that weekly split would look like. You're going to do mobility every single day. You're going to lift Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. Okay. I have on here athlete day. This is like the day that we do our plyometrics. So we could be interchanging with athlete day and the full body lift. So sometimes there might only be 3 lifts instead of 4. And then Friday, we're going to do mobility and we're going to do a mock meet in most cases. Some type of fun scenario. Okay. So now, goals for each month with a specific program. Okay. Training schedule for big meets. Right here, regional, states, expectations and frustrations laid out ahead of time. These are usually the timelines that kids start to get frustrated. Week 3 through 5, they threw really well because they were excited to throw earlier in the year. Then usually they'll have a comeback around, and then week 8 through 10, it gets a little tough, but once it gets warm outside, everybody starts to hit PRs. Okay, now, so again, going back to culture, right, is that I think on a daily basis, the way to bring in, the way to help kids get more into their training is to, they would understand what groups they're in, and they could say like, hey, you know, this bronze group is throwing discus, silver group is throwing shot, gold group is starting off with drills, okay? A kid says that, an athlete says that. A specific group gets to play the music on a specific day. Okay? Guess what happens when people play music they like? They have good energy at practice. Okay? Like the hardest thing for me was realizing like some kids don't like to listen to Rage Against the Machine anymore. And like that's what I grew up with lifting. That's all I liked to lift to when I was growing up. And some kids today don't like to do that. I also grew up listening to Led Zeppelin, and 90% of the kids are like, who's Led Zeppelin? But guess what? Don't play Led Zeppelin then for those kids. Let them play Taylor Swift. It's for them, not you. Sadly. Now, on the monthly aspect, try to keep track of how many total throws everybody's taking. About, right? Like if you could sit there and say, hey, we took 150 throws. Okay, that's 600 throws last month. Now that gets quantified, and they start to take pride in that, because they don't want to see that number go down. Numbers are fun to see go up. Just like in your bank account, it's fun to see those numbers go up. When a kid sees it, they're like, oh man, I took 190 lifts, you know, and that's why my bench went up. Now they start to associate hard work with reps, and that makes things fun. It's called gamification, okay? And that's something that we can really do to help pull them through. And I do think it's important to track the sessions missed. That's something we actually do on site at the gym. We can see who doesn't train enough, and then when we test them, we can see, hey, your results suck because you only trained 10 times the last 12 weeks. And then the season would be, let's have a yearly goals. Okay, how many feet as a team can we add to our PRs? Celebrate all those. Celebrate, again, the number of throws taken, and then those benchmark clubs. I think this, and I'm going to get into this a lot in the discus discussion, is having specific benchmark clubs starting for 40 feet, 50 feet for the guys. Those are really, really good benchmarks to achieve. For girls, 30, 35, 40. Getting into those marks is where they really start to enjoy that, and it's like a pull through to get to that next level. So those are some key things around culture. And then this is really everything's going to come back to you guys, okay? It all comes back to implementation being on you. And this is a QR code. We have a Throws Coach webinar also on Monday that we're doing on YouTube. Make sure that you like, subscribe, and slam the notification bell. But yeah, this QR code is for the Throws webinar. My biggest thing here, though, is that I really want everybody to recognize kids will do work, okay? We can make all the excuses that we want. Oh, they're COVID kids. Oh, well, well, they're so lazy, blah, blah, blah. It's like, dude, make a plan, make it fun for them, make it competitive, okay? And kids will show up. They will do the work. I promise you they will do it if you're willing to do a little bit more to get them to come out. And so the most important thing is that we're here to support the athlete and celebrate their wins, okay? And it's for them, but we've got to do a little bit more for them to get to that next level. So sign up for that online webinar. I'll see you in the discus conversation. Any questions though? Yeah.
Throws per day, what do you think?
I like between 20 and 30, but I think there's some high school kids that are willing to just throw from sun up to sundown. I think like 20 to 30 is ideal, full throws.
Group might be a little less, maybe.
Yeah, and yeah, as they build in, and then they could once they get like 3 or 4 weeks, I think they can start to take a bit more.
Yeah. As the season goes on, do you kind of have them throw heavier implements certain times of the season or lighten up?
So I really like heavy shots with people who are learning technique. I think one thing to think about is when you throw like a heavy implement, it's slower. And when the movement is slower, the kid can feel it a little bit more. So we'll throw heavy a lot. I think it's important early too. If you have a kid that's better, like a 55-foot shot putter or 50-foot or whatever, or like a 35-foot girl, something like that, I think it's important to see if they do well with the heavy implements and then how long it takes for them to, because sometimes kids will throw a heavy shot and then when they come off of it for like 2 weeks, they feel like crap. And then they might get into the like little head games. So it's important to see like how long is that adaptation period. Some kids that are really athletic, they don't have that. They throw a heavy shot and then they just go bomb the light one. So it really depends. We'll peak kids with a heavy shot and they never touch a light one, and vice versa. I do really like for our younger athletes, we have a girl right now, she's a 12-year-old girl. Actually, she's in the next, oh no, she was in the beginning of this one. Man, I didn't talk about her at all. That's actually surprising. Elijah's like, yeah, that's all you ever talk about. Her name's Loveland, and she's gonna throw 60 feet in high school. But she's never touched a light implement, only the 4K and on the 10-pounder. But one time she did, I said never. I was like, yo, let's see what you can throw the 3.25. And she threw like 51 feet. And it's like, all right, I want to see how high we can get her heavy stuff because she just randomly threw the light one time. I haven't put it into her programming. So it's like, I just want to push the heavy ones as long as I can. But I know I'm not answering your question. I think it really just depends. I'm willing to throw heavy all year though. Yeah. Okay, so a day before, I think it's good for them to go to the track, to go there. Let's say, like this is a good one for even if you're in a high pressure situation. They only get to pick 1 or 2 cues, and those 2 cues have to be associated with a movement. It has to be, what does this cue mean? If I say go wide around the left or be balanced on the left, what does that mean? They have to show that. So there's 1 or 2 cues, and then they take 3 to 4 standing throws, and then usually we'll go right into non-reverse fulls. Okay, so we might take like 5 or 6 non-reverses and 5 or 6 fulls, and then we're good. And that's it. So anywhere from 8 to 15. I think girls can take more the day before than guys. Guys will throw as hard as possible, especially if there's other people around them, whereas the girls will be much more dialed in on what they need to worry about. So that's where I would be. And then they would do the mobility, and then you have a recap, and then you talk about tomorrow. Okay, what does football do? They watch film. They break everybody down. Then they have 900 meetings that they don't need to have, but they want to feel like they're a coach in the NFL, so they do all that. So like, we could do the same thing for 10 minutes at the end of practice. Be like, hey, tomorrow, this is the routine. You're going to wake up. You're going to do these stretches. You're going to visualize these cues. You're going to take some, you're going to do some mobility stuff. When you get to the track, we're going to rest. We're not going to do anything till we're about an hour to an hour and 20 minutes out. Then you can start to walk around, and then you just have that work all the way up to the moment that they're going to start to compete. And that stuff, I think, is really important to teach them that regimen of like, this happens and this happens and this happens. It's a flow chart basically to get them comfortable with it. And at the same time, the mock meets that we'll do, we want to get them comfortable, but then at the same time, we'll throw some weird wrench into it because it's good to have the routine, but it's also good to be able to adapt when you have the routine as well. And I think the more routine-based they are, the easier they adapt in a wild scenario because they can go to another routine that provides comfort. I don't know if that helps. Yeah.
So one more thing is, right before the throws in the meet, some of my athletes, they love caffeine.
Yeah.
But I feel like sometimes it's actually a negative.
I mean, it can be. It can also be a big positive too. Yeah, I think it's interesting because it's. I think it depends on maturity. I think a lot of it too is like gym culture. They see guys taking big pre-workouts and stuff. I like to say, so like this goes along the lines with creatine. My dad didn't let us use any pre-workout or creatine until we could lift. We had to show him we could lift for 2 years. And then it was like, okay, now we could start, like creatine when, this is like the late 90s, like people are like, oh, this is a steroid. I don't know, like it was like this horrible thing. My dad was fortunate enough, he knew that creatine was okay, like it was safe. So we started to use it, I want to say around, like I was 16. But caffeine, I didn't really understand what it was doing to me until I was older. And I think that's one thing I would just be aware with them. But if a kid does well, I let it happen. I'm not a huge stickler, as long as their parents are okay. But then when if they have 2 or 3 monsters, it's like, yo, you gotta calm down because you're gonna have to go to bed at some time.
If you had to choose something to leave out that was least important.
Mobility. Only because I don't like to do it. I would say that.
I mean, would you cut down the number of throws?
I would cut.
And do the other stuff?
Or I would do this. I would say, okay, we get 30 minutes in the gym. We're going to do a clean and a squat, and you got 30 minutes. We're going to bench and do pull-ups. That's it. And that's you can get really strong just doing those lifts and not doing extra. So that's what I would do. I also think that's the one benefit, like the take your fulls right away. It alleviates so much time, and we need to not expect a kid to take a full spin perfectly right away. Like, it's okay that their spin looks like crap for a year, but they're going to get comfortable rotating. And when they get comfortable rotating, they can make adjustments rotating. And so that's where I would say that alleviates some of those like weird drills and stuff that we might do to just eat up time.